So good morning learners. Our lesson for today is Newton's law of motion. So before we start, our objectives for today is you should be able to investigate the relationship between the amount of force applied and the mass of the object to the amount of change in the object's motion. Second is you should infer that when a body exerts a force on another, an equal amount of force is exerted back to it. So you should be able to demonstrate how a body responds to changes in motion. So before we start, I'm going to make you watch a short video regarding the 3 laws of motion. So you should take note of important facts.
Have you ever noticed that it's harder to start pedaling your bicycle than it is to ride at a constant speed? Or wondered what causes your bicycle to move? Or thought about why it goes forward instead of backwards or sideways? Perhaps not, and you wouldn't be alone. It wasn't until the 17th century that Isaac Newton described the fundamental laws of motion, and we understood the answer to these 3 questions. What Newton recognized was that things tend to keep on doing what they are already doing. So when your bicycle is stopped, it stays stopped. And when it is going, it stays going. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and objects at rest tend to stay at rest. That's Newton's first law. Physicists call it the law of inertia, which is a fancy way of saying that moving objects don't spontaneously speed up, slow down, or change direction. It is this inertia that you must overcome to get your bicycle moving. Now you know that you have to overcome inertia to get your bicycle moving, but what is it that allows you to overcome it? Well, the answer is explained by Newton's second law. In mathematical terms, Newton's second law says that force is the product of mass times acceleration. To cause an object to accelerate, or speed up, a force must be applied. The more force you apply, the quicker you accelerate. And the more mass your bicycle has, and the more mass you have too, the more force you have to use to accelerate at the same rate. This is why it would be really difficult to pedal a 10,000-pound bicycle. And it is this force, which is applied by your legs pushing down on the pedals, that allows you to overcome Newton's law of inertia. The harder you push down on the pedals, the bigger the force, and the quicker you accelerate. Now on to the final question. When you do get your bike moving, why does it go forward? According to Newton's third law, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. To understand this, think about what happens when you drop a bouncy ball. As the bouncy ball hits the floor, it causes a downward force on the floor. This is the action. The floor reacts by pushing on the ball with the same force, but in the opposite direction, upward, causing it to bounce back up to you. Together, the floor and the ball form what's called the action-reaction pair. When it comes to your bicycle, it is a little more complicated. As your bicycle wheels spin clockwise, the parts of each tire touching the ground push backwards against the earth. The actions. The ground pushes forward with the same force against each of your tires. The reactions. Since you have 2 bicycle tires, each one forms an action-reaction pair with the ground. And since the earth is really big compared to your bicycle, it barely moves from the force caused by your bicycle tires pushing backwards. But you are propelled forward.
So now, remember the material that I have gave you. So please go to second page and answer this one.
I'm done.
So now that you have a prior knowledge, so let me check the works. So you have the answer for first motion, second motion, and third motion. And you have also given examples for the 3 laws of motion. How about you? So you have also given the first, second, and third motion, and also you have examples. So now, let's discuss it and have a deeper understanding on the Newton's 3 laws of motion. So the first law, which is the law of inertia, it states that an object at rest will stay at rest and an object in motion will stay in motion until acted upon by an outside unbalanced external force. So ano ibig sabihin nito? Kapag daw ang object ay naka-rest, ibig sabihin, naka-rest lang siya. Kapag in motion siya or gumagalaw, gagalaw siya unless may pumigil sa kanya or may gumalaw sa kanya. So all objects resist having their motion change. This tendency to resist change in motion is called inertia. So the more mass an object has, the greater its inertia. So kung gaano to kabigat, ganun din kadami o kalaki ang kanyang inertia. So, to overcome inertia, an unbalanced force must be applied to an object. So, kung titingnan nyo yung example sa inyong material na binigay ko sa inyo, the next page. So, yung ball naka-rest. So, the object stay at rest and will remain at rest unless acted by an unbalanced force. Alin yung unbalanced force? Yung pagsipa doon sa bola. So, an object in motion will continue with constant speed and direction. So, di ba, nung sinipa siya, syempre, tatalsik. So, unless acted by an unbalanced force, alin dyan yung force? Yung net. Yan. So, ngayon, ang tanong, why then do we observe everyday objects in motion slowing down? Bakit daw bumabagal? And becoming less seemingly without an outside force? Bakit tumitigil yung bola kahit wala namang pumipigil? Yun ay dahil sa friction. So in this case, rolling friction with the ground will oppose the motion of the rolling soccer ball. So kung nga itong mouse, so ginanyan ko siya, bakit siya tumigil? Dahil sa friction itong table. So as a result, the ball will eventually come to rest. Friction opposes the motion of all moving objects. So, like the soccer ball, all moving objects eventually come to a stop even if no other forces oppose their motion. So, malinaw ba ang ating first law of inertia?
Okay.
Yan. Ngayon naman, dumako tayo sa second law of acceleration. So, ito naman ay it states that the force of an object is equal to its mass times its acceleration. So, ang tatandaan nyo dito is mass times acceleration. So, anong acceleration? Acceleration depends on how heavy the object is and how hard it is being pushed or pulled. So, for example, itong mouse ulit. Gaano daw to bigat? And gaano siya tinulak? Gaano kalakas siya tinulak? Kung mahina ba o malakas? So, the greater the force, ano mangyayari? Mas malakas ba ang tulak sa kanya? Mas mabilis ba siya?
Accelerate.
Siyempre, kapag malakas ko tinulak, mas malakas din ang kanyang paggalaw. So, the heavier object is, the greater its mass, the less it will be accelerated by a particular force. So, kung nga naman, itong laptop, kung gaano ko to kalakas tinulak, pag tinulak ko din ba ito ng ganun kalakas, gagalaw din ba ito ng ganun kabilis?
Hindi.
Hindi. So, ibig sabihin, kung mas mabigat to, ibig sabihin, mas maliit yung pag-accelerate niya. So, ano bang ibang example nito? So, for our first example, kung titingnan nyo dyan, it is easier to pull a small rock than a bigger rock. When we pull the small rock, the rock accelerates faster due to the force applied by the hands. So, ayan. Titingin nyo, alin dyan ang mas mag-accelerate?
Yung small rock.
Yung small rock. Alin ang mas mabagal?
Yung big rock.
Yung big rock. So, sa example 2, bago ko explain, alin dyan ang mas mag-accelerate?
Yung small.
Yung small, syempre. Anong pwedeng reason?
Dahil sa mass.
Sa mass, syempre. Kasi nga, mas maliit yung bola dito kaysa dun sa bola ng pang-basketball. So, because the mass of each ball is different, each ball will travel a different distance at a different speed when it is hit with the same force. Ngayon naman, tingnan nyo yung sa pangatlong example. Alin ang mas mag-accelerate? Yung una ba? Yung pangalawa? Siyempre, yung una. Kasi nga, mas kakaunti yung mass niya. Isang box lang yung nasa loob. So, the more boxes are loaded in the cart, the heavier the car gets. Then, the larger amount of force is needed to push it. So, kailangan mas malakas yung pagtulak mo dun sa cart. So, clear ba tayo sa ibig sabihin ng law of acceleration? So, ngayon naman, di ba sinabi ko sa inyo, tandaan nyo yung mass times acceleration. So, ngayon, in mathematical form, second law can be stated as F net equals mass times acceleration. So, sa next page tayo. Yan. So, meron tayo ditong sample problem. So, a 50 kg cart is pushed and produces acceleration of 2 meters per second squared to the north. What's the net external force exerted on the cart? Ano daw yung lakas na nilagay dun sa cart. So, ano ang mass natin dito sa problem?
50 kilograms.
50 kilograms. Ano yung acceleration?
2
2 meters per second squared to the north. So, ayun yung given natin. Anong hinahanap natin?
Force exerted on the cart.
So, ngayon, try nyo i-solve bago nyo tingnan sa inyong papel.
Ano mass? 50. Acceleration. 2 meters per second squared. 50 times 2 is equal to 100.
Yan. Tingnan natin kung tama ang sagot nyo. So, F net equals mass times acceleration. Ang mass ay 50 kilograms. Ang acceleration natin ay 2 meters per second squared. So, 50 times 2 ay 100. And then, yung mga unit ay pagsasama-samahin lang natin. Kilograms times meter per second squared. Ang ibig sabihin nun ay Newton or 100 Newton to the north. Siyempre, include nyo yung direction ng acceleration. So, patingin ang sagot nyo. Ayan, nakuha nyo naman parehas. So, malinaw ba ang law of acceleration? Now naman, mag-proceed tayo sa law of interaction. So, ano naman ang statement ng law of interaction? So, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So, ngayon, dito, when an object exerts an force on the second object exerts an equal force in the opposite direction of the first object. Dun sa kaninang pinanood nyo, alin ang first object at second object?
Yung bicycle.
Yung bicycle ay, yung unang gulong ay yung first object. Tapos, yung second object ay yung gulong sa unahan. So, the force exerted by the first object is the action force. Di ba may example doon na ball? Kapag nag-bounce yung ball, lalapat siya sa lupa. Yun yung action force. Siyempre, magbabounce yun, pabalik. Yun ang reaction force. So, meron pa dito ibang examples. So, when a kangaroo pushes against the ground with its hind leg, the land pushes back with equal force and opposite direction. So, di ba, ito yung paan ng kangaroo. Tapos, ito yung ground. Ito yung force ng kangaroo. Siyempre, ang sabi, ang magkakaroon ng equal and opposite reaction. Yung ground, ipupush naman niya yung kangaroo in opposite direction. Pataas naman yung kangaroo, pababa. Yung sa land, ang reaction niya is pataas, syempre. So, ngayon naman, so when a break dancer supports his body with one hand on the floor pushes back with an equal force and opposite direction. So, ganun din siya sa kangaroo. So, next example is when a kayaker pushes against the water with her oar, the kayak move forward. So, bakit kaya? Try nyo i-explain. Kapag daw nag-paddle ang kayaker, bakit daw di ba palikod yon? Eh, bakit paunahan siya?
Kasi tinutulak siya ng tubig, ng
Oo.
force ng water.
Kasi nga, nung nag-paddle siya, papunta dito. And then, yung water, magkakaroon ng reaction. Anong opposite ng pagganto? Siyempre, una. So, kaya, gagalaw yung kanilang kayak. So, the last example is when the rocket's engine thrusts downward against the air, the rocket soars upward. Siyempre, ang force nung pagbuga nung sa rocket ay pababa. And then, yung reaction niya is pataas. Hindi makakalipad ang rocket natin. So, ayun. Kaya nyo bang i-memorize or i-state ang tatlong laws of motion? So, bibigyan ko kayo ng 10 minutes para sa ulo nito. Tell me when you're ready. Ayan. Sino mauna sa inyong dalawa? Yan. So, the first law of motion is?
For me, the object resists having the motion change, and we make effort to the object to make the object move. And for every action, there's also reaction to the objects that we make to move it.
Yan. So, Tonya?
Okay. So, the Newton's first law of motion is law of inertia. And it states that an object at rest will remain at rest and an object in motion will remain in motion unless a force acted upon. And the second law of motion is states that force is equal to mass times acceleration. And it also states that when an object is heavy, it will accelerate less or hindi siya ganun gagalaw. Tapos last ay the third law or the action-reaction. Yun.
Ayan. So ngayon, nag-prepare ako ng isang maikling activity sa inyo. So makikita yun dun sa next page. Ayan. So direction is, fill the missing words to complete the sentences. Then, complete the riddle below by finding the matching number and writing the letters. Ayan. So, nagko-correspond yung mga number sa letter na isasagot nyo. So, hahanapin yung number na nagko-correspond sa letter para masagutan nyo lang sa baba. Ayan. So, pwede na kayo mag-start. Let's go. So, are you done?
Yes, ma'am.
So, yan. So, let's check your work. So, the first is acceleration depends on the force and mass. The outside force that slows down moving object is called
Friction.
friction. The third law of motion is also called
Law of interaction.
as the force increases, the
Acceleration increases too.
so in the second law, the force exerted by the second object is called
Reaction force.
yan, tama. So, another name for Newton's first law of motion is
Law of inertia.
ayan. So, dun sa riddle, ano ang sagot?
Laws of motion.
Yan, tama. So, dun sa second activity, so, identify the law of motion illustrated by the following. So, you leave a book on your office table overnight. When you return in the morning, it is still in the same place. Ano ang laws of motion na naka-apply dito?
Law of inertia.
Law of inertia. So, the second is, a car still moves for some time even if the brakes have been applied.
Law of acceleration.
Yan, tama. So, when a gun fires a bullet, the bullet exerts an equal and opposite reactive force on the gun as it leaves the barrel. The recoil of gun. Ano ang sagot?
Law of interaction.
So, now that you have learned about the three laws of motion, we will have a quiz. So, sa material na binigay ko sa inyo, may sasagutan kayo. So, up to 10 yung multiple choice and merong tatlong solving. So, pwede kayong gumamit ng calculator para ma-solve nyo to. So, pwede kayong mag-start na.
Done.
Okay na yun? Ayan. So, let's go to number 1. So, please read number 1. Sagitan kayo.
Okay. Tama na to. Okay. The resistance of an object to any change in its motion is called B.
Sige.
Friction.
Friction. Number 2.
According to second Newton's law of motion, force is equal to mass times acceleration.
Ayan, tama. Letter D.
Inertia is Newton's law that says that an object will stay at rest or stay in motion.
Ayan, letter A. Stay at rest or stay in motion. Number 4.
A push or pull is called letter C force.
Force. Tama. So, number 5.
For every action, there will be an equal and opposite reaction.
Tama. Letter D. Number 6.
Action and reaction forces are discussed in Newton's third law of motion, letter B.
Ayan. Tama. Number 7.
The acceleration of an object is directly proportional to the magnitude of net force acting on it and is inversely proportional to its mass. Letter B. Law of acceleration.
Letter D. Number 8.
What is the unit used to measure force? Letter Newton.
D. Newton. Number 9.
How long will an object remain at rest according to first law of motion? Letter B. Until an unbalanced force occurs.
And number 10.
What kind of objects have inertia? Letter A. Object with mass.
Ayan, tama. So, ngayon, sa solving, ano ang sagot niyo sa number 1?
375.
Yan, tama. Number 2. Ano sagot niyo?
120 kilogram times meter per second square or 120 newton.
Newton. So, sa number 3, ano sagot niyo?
100 kilogram.
Yan, tama. So ngayon, sa next page, meron akong iiwang homework para sa inyo. So you should label each of the following images or descriptions below as being examples of first, second, or third law by encircling which law does it belong, then explain your answer. So sa pagkatapos nyo na to, sasagutan and then we'll check tomorrow. So ngayon, magre-recall tayo. Ano nga ang first law of motion? Please read.
An object at rest will
Stay at rest, and an object in motion will stay in motion until acted upon by an outside unbalanced external force.
Yan. And then, the second law, which is the law of acceleration, please read.
It states that the force of an object is equal to its mass times acceleration.
And then, the third law. Okay. Yan.
For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction.
Yan. So, have you learned today?
Yes.
Yan. Did you enjoy our activities?
Yes.
Yan. So, see you tomorrow for our next session of tutor. Thank you, class.
Thank you, ma'am.